Mrs. Rulagani Bibigul, in 2014, Afghanistan elected a new president and discovered that it also had, for the first time in 40 years, a first lady that was willing to play this role. Was it something that you agreed with your husband before, or you were just thrown into adapting to a new situation for you?
In his inauguration speech, he did mention me, and he had said, I will be mentioning you in my inauguration. And I thought, you know, he will just say, oh, and my wife is here, and she will be here. But actually what he said, he not only introduced me, but he also said, and expect her to be very active, especially with the returnees and the people who are not the IPD, the internally displaced people. And so he did immediately tell the people that I will be active socially, on social issues and on issues of people who really need help. And so that was it, yes.
The thing that is a little bit out of the standards in Afghanistan, where sometimes we don't pronounce women's names,
yes,
or women are not known, that the first time a president is talking about his wife,
yes,
he's giving her a face, he's giving her a role also. So was it something that was really revolutionary for Afghanistan, or there was something there that at least came up to the surface for other people to be able to follow it also?
In the present situation, it was something that was revolutionary. For me, myself, it was not revolutionary. I mean, this is how we've always interacted, my husband and I. We respect each other, and we kind of try to help each other or to kind of support each other. But you have to remember the context. The administration that was just before us came right after the Taliban. And during the Taliban time, women were not even allowed to be on the streets but on their own. They were beaten with sticks and all that if ever they were walking on the streets all by themselves. They always needed a male companion, even if it was a little boy of 6 or 7 years old. So yes, it was unusual. I did not realize how unusual it was. But people after that, women came to me and said, you cannot imagine the impact it has made on us, because we said, oh, finally, a husband who's recognizing his wife. Now my husband can recognize me.
Talking about the role of the First Lady and this office that you opened, what is it doing today? Can you say that it's been contributing to changing something in the life of the Afghan woman in general?
Apparently. When I first came, I did not have an agenda. I didn't know what a First Lady does, and nobody else around me could tell me what an official role I could lead. So I went very slowly at first, and the only thing that I did is that to announce that I had an open doors policy, because of security, I'm not really encouraged to move too much outside the palace, and so when I announced this policy of open doors, I was flooded by groups of women especially, but groups of people from all corners of the country were very eager to get to know who is that new First Lady. And also, before us, I think very few people had the privilege of coming on the palace grounds. So for them, it was also a way of coming and seeing what the palace looks like. And I remember in one of the first meetings I had, one of those rural women told me that, oh yeah, I have an aunt who had come and had tea at the palace some 40 years ago. And she keeps, each time the family gets together, she keeps telling us the story. now I will have my stories to tell when the family will get together. So I was a little bit like the new kid on the block, and they came to see me and to see what I was. And there had been during the campaign a lot of, virtual facts and wrong information circulated, and they wanted to see for themselves what was true and what was not. And then when they came, I love seeing people, I love talking with people. So usually they leave here having enjoyed their time and having had the time to talk about what worries them. So this brings to what kind of effect I may have had on the women, is that suddenly they have a place they can go and talk about what worries them, what hopes they have, what concerns they have. And that was new. That was really something new, because other First Ladies before me may have had some official appearances, but they were not available to sit down and talk with the common man and the common woman. So I think in a first step it was a little bit therapeutic. They could come and talk about whatever they want, and I would talk back, and we would have long conversations. Then slowly I started seeing I could see patterns, what were their problems. And so I start asking questions as to how we could solve their problems. Because I believe I don't have the solutions. I don't know their conditions of life. I know a little bit about it, but I'm not living in their home. I'm not living in their village or in their town. I don't know what their constraints are. I don't know what their real problems are. So they are the ones who have to find their solutions. But I can encourage them and I can make them talk. And often they would feel better because they would say, oh, okay, let me go and try this. So basically, I think next to the therapeutic thing, I think it was much more like an encouragement. It seems like I validated their concerns. That they are right to be able to worry about the system of education, about the medical services, about transportation, about these things of everyday life. And so from there were sometimes my office organizes some events. As I said, my office now, we're about 10 to 11 people. And we invite some women. We try always to bring new faces, not always the same people to come and see. And to kind of help them get to know each other, network, but also to kind of help them feel that, yes, in society, they have a place. They have their own event.
From what I feel and sense from your words, that in the end, your perception of the Afghan woman, it's not that there are these helpless women that have no appearance, that don't know what they want, that they need to be assisted all the time. What you're giving here is a description of women who are really exceptional and know exactly what they want, despite the conditions that might be very harsh around them.
Actually, this is one of the things that disturbed me a lot when I first started this period of my life, is that I felt that the narrative, especially the international narrative, was that Afghan women were helpless, that they were isolated, and that they were very weak, and that they didn't know what to do. And my knowledge of the women in my husband's family was totally different from that. They were strong women. Some of them became professional. Others elected to stay home. But they were all very highly regarded in the family, very respected. And they were, they were having a say in their lives of their own lives, but also the lives of their children, of the family. They were active participants. Of course, my knowledge was very vivid because my husband and I had left just before the civil war in Afghanistan to go for a PhD in the States. And so I remembered the way Afghanistan used to be. And when I came back, I found in Afghanistan that was really very, very different, very torn up. The society was, you know, you walk in the street, you don't see anyone you know. This was one of my husband's aunt who had stayed throughout. She would tell me now, when I would go down to the market, I would see at least 20 people I would talk with, now I go down, I come back, I don't see one face I really recognize. So there had been a lot of changes in demography. Some people had left the country. Some people from the rural areas had come to stay in the cities. And also bits of families, and Lebanese people will recognize that during civil war, some decide to go abroad, some decide to live in a different province of the country. There are a lot of changes, and they adapt and they keep changing. So it was, I felt that women in all this had lost their anchor, because their anchor really was the family, the extended family. They were very important within the family. And when the extended family breaks down, and you know, it gets to be very difficult for the woman to assert herself, because she has always worked within the family. So basically what was really good after 2001, 2002, is that the families started to reconstitute themselves. And so some of the progress is not due to me, but to the fact that families came back and women started to be more, you know what their role in society was. But still, they were not as respected as they were before. And maybe what I encourage them is to regain that respect and to try and assert themselves, not necessarily aggressively, but to make sure that people appreciate what they're doing. Because if a woman is not there to run the family, even if it's an extended family and you need several women for that, if women are not there, the family falls apart. You know, we are the ones who keep things going, and so I pushed for that especially. And then I decided to also, when I speak publicly, to encourage women that they are important, that their contribution to society is important. And when I do, I have done a few trips abroad, I then do speak about the strength of the Afghan women. And I think there I may have had some impact in terms of changing the narrative, that people don't look at Afghan women now as if they were totally helpless.
One of the things that is quite interesting and that you've done is encouraging these women also to have economic autonomy.
That is really true. It's extremely important because unfortunately up till today, economists have not found a way to monetize the work of women at home. So a woman who stays home, actually in the eyes of an economist, her contribution to the economy of the country is zero, which is totally untrue. But this goes also, it applies because in the economy they don't take account of the contribution of women that are staying at home. Then the men also feel, okay, you know, they take it for granted the woman stays home and does all these things. This has no value. When the woman starts having an income of her own, like maybe she's doing some embroidery, or maybe she does little cookies and sells them, have the corner shop sell those cookies. Or maybe she is a hairdresser, and when there are weddings, the bride and the bridesmaid and the mother of the bride and the mother of the groom might come and they all have their hair done. So she gets to have a little bit of income. Then she is using that income within the household, and it makes a difference. Then people say, oh, she's earning money, so she's becoming important. So I encourage them to have activities that will bring an income. But I leave it to them whether they want this activity to be within the house or to be outside, to go and work in an office or in a shop or something like that.
Mrs. Roulagani, when we hear you talk, it seems that you are going to run in the elections, next coming election in this legislative year.
No, not at all. I try to stay away from politics for several reasons. When I first became First Lady, there were already a very good number of women in the parliament that were extremely vocal and extremely articulate, and they didn't need any encouragement, any further encouragement. So I decided to concentrate on more on the people who really need help, the vulnerable people. And among them, it's basically women. 70% at least of them are women. So these are the people I really work for. And I can't really do much, but what I can do, I can listen to them. I can try and facilitate whatever problem they have through my advisors, who can make phone calls and try and figure out a legal way of resolving their problems. And then I can advocate. But apart from that, as I told you, I have no budget, so I definitely cannot run for elections.
27% of the parliamentarians in Afghanistan are women.
Yes.
Despite the fact that in the constitution there is a quota of 20%. Do you see this trend evolving? Do you see in the upcoming elections that we hope to have this year that this is going to be the same number of women running for the parliament, or even more now that they feel more engaged into their society?
Actually, as you mentioned, 20% of the seats are already dedicated to women. The additional things are women who have already had some exposure and have done well, and people want them to come back as their deputies. And I really cannot tell, because this parliament has been now in power for, I think, over 8 years. And so there has not been really a check to see whether people are happy with them or not. And these coming elections are going to be very interesting from that point of view, because it might be a check on how popular they are.
Well, this is one point in common between your adopted country and your country of birth, Lebanon and Afghanistan. Parliaments that stay for a long time, that renew for themselves, and both of the countries have a challenge this year, which is legislative election. What is your advice for Lebanese women who never reached that kind of quota in the Lebanese parliament, despite being more liberal than Afghanistan?
Well, my advice is that if ever they really feel moved to work in the political field, they should go and do it. And they should do it seriously. They should not just kind of nitpick here and nitpick there. Rights are not granted. Rights are taken. They need to work for it. And if ever there are some women who really want to raise the voices of all women, I would encourage them. I would be very, very proud of them.
Well, one thing you talk about these exceptional women in different parts of Afghanistan, and you encourage those that are like this in Lebanon to do the same. But you have been exceptional yourself in your life. You had a very uncommon life. You, in the 70s, as a Lebanese, you married an Afghan.
I must say that customs in Lebanon and in Afghanistan are very much the same. Maybe Lebanon was a little more sophisticated in terms of being more aware of Western habits and Western fashions. But my father insisted on coming and visiting the family before we got married. And that was really made the whole difference. So I came with my father the first time, and we met the family. And my father was a real nice man, so they really liked him, and they liked me. A little bit because my husband at the time was considered like a very difficult person to live with, and so they were very pleased that finally he had found somebody to marry. But the other factor that really helped my integration was that I knew Arabic. And Arabic is the language of the Holy Quran. And so the children would come and say, "Did you hear her talk? She's talking like the Quran." And so that was, again, a very big factor. And as I mentioned, the third thing is that a lot of the customs are very similar. I remember early on, I was we hadn't been married more than 2 or 3 months, and a family came to visit. And as I said, at that time, it was really family time. And it was a mother, her son, and his German wife, and their daughter, and her daughter. And the German young woman, who must have been married for a couple of years at least, because they had a little boy who was running around. She came to me and she said, "How are you managing? I can't understand my mother-in-law." And her problem with her mother-in-law is that when they sat at the table, the mother-in-law kept telling her, "Why don't you have some of this? Why don't you have some of that?" And she would say no, and she would expect the mother-in-law to stop. And no, the mother-in-law would do it another time and a third time. And it's really very much like that we do it in Lebanon. So for me, it was not a problem. And I explained to her that it was actually a sign of respecting her that they were doing. It was not to annoy her that she kept telling her, "Please have some of this, please have some of that." So my integration was quite quick. The fourth thing was that Persian has, Dari at least, the kind of Persian we speak in Afghanistan, has a lot of vocabulary that's similar to the Arabic vocabulary. So once you learn the grammar, it's very easy to start talking.
Today, you feel you are more Afghan, more Lebanese, or more American for the 30 years that you lived in the States?
Well, in the words of Amin Maalouf, not his exact words, but in the words, in the theme that he develops in his book on identity and violence, I embrace all my identities. And maybe, given the circumstances, I might be more Afghan in Afghanistan, Lebanese in Lebanon, American in America. But it's really, I feel I am the sum of my identities. I embrace them all and I accept them all. And I take the best in each one. And I try to live by it.
Bibi Gul, thank you.
Thank you.